I want to prosper. I want to prosper. I want to prosper. I want to prosper. Hey, everybody. Welcome to e-commerce stories Philippines edition. What's happening, Flip Ruby, the #1 e-commerce entrepreneur that I know out there. How you doing, my man?
Good. How are you, Dennis? It's great to be here. And hello to all of our listeners.
Awesome, awesome. Well, yeah, good to see you again, man. It's been way too long, but I know you've been out there busy hustling and trying to play a little bit of golf and trying to make sure that life, continues and all that. So glad you could make it and
Thank you,
glad
sir.
you could join us. But hey, why don't we go ahead and just jump in? I'd love for you to introduce yourself since you've got a vast e-commerce, entrepreneurial background. You've got a good corporate background. Yeah, if you could introduce yourself, tell us, where you're from, what you're passionate about. That would be awesome.
Awesome. So again, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. So my name is Flip. Again, it's also nice because it's more or less a shortcut for my name, which is Philip, like Philippines. So it is a reflection also of my passion towards making this country a great one. So just to give a little bit of a background of myself, I am a full-time corporate guy, a full-time e-commerce and entrepreneur, and a full-time boyfriend. So you might be thinking, all right, but how can you do that? And trust me in saying that there is a perfect balance into being full-time in each of them, which I'd gladly share with you guys today.
Yeah, that would be awesome. That is a pretty cool background. And I think it definitely would probably resonate with a lot of people here, right? Having a full-time gig, also, really going all in also on e-commerce, which, I know you're the kind of guy that just, doesn't do anything unless he goes all the way. But yeah, tell us about your maybe we can just start with your corporate background, then we'll, lean into your entrepreneurial journeys.
Awesome. So actually, my e-commerce, my corporate background started off with being in a local telco. So I was part of PLDT before. So that got into basically the technological juices that you'd see, and the internet was quite a the internet was already quite embedded in the Philippine society. So you'll start to see how it's already being enabling a lot of different businesses. And after that, I actually worked for the first e-commerce company in the Philippines, which is Zalora Philippines. So that
Oh,
aligned with aligned with essentially my experience in the telco. Now you'd see the connection towards the e-commerce space, which was Zalora Philippines. So it was more about Asia's #1 leading fashion destination. During that time, in Zalora, we decided to essentially, carve out our logistics arm and to build an e-commerce logistics fulfillment solution, which is Entrego. So just jumping on the connecting the dots in the corporate setting from the internet into now an e-commerce marketplace or website, and now towards logistics and fulfillment. I now did move to Concepcion Industrial Corporation, which is primarily an air conditioning company, which is mostly about retail. But my task there was to actually build the actual e-commerce side of that business. So you'd see that as Steve Jobs has said, they're only able to connect the dots looking backwards. And I think with connecting from where I started in PLDT to my e-commerce journey and now landing myself into be an e-commerce entrepreneur kind of now makes sense, right? It kind of more or less aligns towards what I could be or what I should be doing in terms of a passion moving forward in my career in life. So I guess
that's
that's more or
cool.
less like a snippet as to how I ended up where I am today.
That's awesome, man. Well, before we get into the entrepreneurial side, Yeah, what a great list of companies that you had a chance to work for or and are currently working with. I'd love to hear more about, how you went from, one of the big telcos because, to Zalora, because e-commerce in those days was still early and new. And I'm sure there was a lot of people, maybe even you yourself was thinking, hey, why take a risk? Tell us about how you went through that shift to Zalora.
Right. So essentially during that time, it was what do you call this? It was a how would I say this? I wanted to be part of something that would, more or less contribute to a different side of Philippine commerce. Said it was new, it was, exciting, it was, starting to be built in the Philippines. I wanted to understand how to scale it up so it becomes a normal way of life, and a normal way of dealing commerce, especially with millennials, especially still with different generations that we have in the Philippines. It was something that was more or less taboo then. The I think the challenge that we had then was ordering something online, ordering through e-commerce was there's still a little bit of a trust issue. When you order before, probably like way back in 2016, it would be very different as how you transact today. Because then during those times, you think, all right, do you think the product that will be delivered to me is original or something like that? Do you think that the payment that I sent out did actually pass through and stuff like that? Is this a scam or whatsoever? So there were still a lot of uncertainties, or a lot of hesitation for Philippine consumers to actually transact online. And it was something that I wanted to more or less propagate or change, and be part of this massive growth of this industry, especially now that it did start during the before the pandemic even hit, and then now that there's a drastic shift in behavior and workplace because of what has transpired since 2020. Now you'd see that there's really an e-commerce boom, and we are more or less now built as a society to accept this type of new reality.
So were there and when Zalora was a pioneer. So
Mhm.
you saw a lot of the early days of brand recognition,
Mhm.
a lot of doubt from consumers, and also the country wasn't even well built when it came to infrastructure to support
Exactly.
e-commerce at that stage. Am I right?
That's right. There was actually a challenge in the next company that was I was privileged to start, which is Entrego. Um, like if you compare e-commerce with, let's say, Singapore or Hong Kong or Taiwan, where you're looking at a very small geographical location where infrastructure was already built. There are a lot of trains, um, roads, versus here in the Philippines where we're archipelagic in nature. So there are more than 7,000 islands, and every day it just increases significantly also. So it becomes much more difficult for e-commerce to be spread across the entire country. Of course, you have your mega centers, which are Metro Manila, where it also becomes a challenge because number one, do we have the right product that we can just ship out? What is also gonna be, you can't put a refrigerator in a motorcycle, for example, right? So there's also a mixture of product and the delivery aspect of it. So I think there are a lot of challenges early on, as this was something that's still being optimized, and developed, at least in our space. Because traditionally in the Philippines, we are a we are dominated by brick and mortar. The way for us to shop was really going to stores physically on a Saturday or the weekend, groceries, up to dealing with, let's say, barber shops or something like that. It's always you moving towards that particular physical space, and now you're bringing it closer to your home, while the convenience is now, you're making it closer to you or bringing it closer to you, and that's basically the different shift of the paradigm, at least for this particular behavior in consumers.
Yeah, so you saw the fashion and apparel and then, help build out, the logistics side. Uh, and then now the Concepcion group, tell us about that business. And I'm sure maybe a lot of people probably wondering what do you guys do with e-commerce, right?
Right.
So, love to double click on that a little bit because, I'm sure a lot of people are like, how do you guys do e-commerce over there?
Right. So, like you mentioned earlier, like fashion was, excuse me. So, fashion has, sorry, e-commerce in terms of what type of product will also depend on how you deliver e-commerce. Excuse me. So, fashion, for example, was quite a different or unique animal because with fashion, sometimes it's you have to feel the product, you have to fit it. Because what you see online, let's say, all right, you're a large or you're small in a shirt, you'd see, a model wearing it, it looks very nice, but then it becomes much more personal to you when you actually be the one to fit it. So it was a barrier to entry for fashion because, for shoes it's okay, but for dresses, for pants, there's a little bit of a personal element into it where when you deliver it, you have to give a little bit of time also for the consumer to try it out, and if he doesn't like it, you have to open up essentially returns on the spot. So that's because the product essentially was a dress. So Zalora's case, when you deliver a shirt, the consumer will have 15 minutes to try it on. If he doesn't like it, you give it back to the rider. Now
Oh,
with Concepcion Industries, it's going to be a very difficult situation then because these are air conditioning units. So the e-commerce side of it is actually bringing or making it much more convenient for the consumer to not get out to go to the store, try out air conditioning units that don't even work on display. But we actually make it easier for the consumer to send someone out. A physical guy goes to your house, scopes and assesses your situation, recommends the perfect air conditioning unit for you, and then comes back with the installation, all in the same platform, so that the customer touch point is just one touch point. It makes it even easier for the consumer to transact because there's a personal shopper element into it. You're talking to a concierge and you're getting the correct product fit for you. And installation doesn't come with a different supplier in whatsoever way. So that's how we evolved essentially this particular business model in a seemingly very traditional or non-sexy way or a product like a refrigerator or your typical appliances, right? I mean, you'd think that that's the least thing that you will buy e-commerce wise, but you'll see there's also a massive growth in this particular side of the our category because now you're looking at the consumer behavior that wants everything to go to their home in the most convenient and easiest manner. So I think that's basically the difference now in how people are transacting also. So that's why it was also an what do you call this? A breath of fresh air for us because we were as a business or as a conglomerate, we are used to going to the traditional routes on retail, traditional routes on going through different dealers and suppliers. But here you're now exploring a, a formerly known as taboo type of thing for this particular product because you know you might initially think that it's not e-commerceable, but there's always a solution for it.
dude, that is amazing. First, to hear your career go from, a very traditional, classic, telco, big company to an early stage or first in the industry or first regional, fashion and apparel e-commerce, then moving to the logistics, which is still a continuous thing that our country is working on, and then to an industry that I'm sure everybody, even myself, would not consider to be in the top 5 categories that embraces e-commerce. And it sounds like you guys have made it service based, You've made it personalized. It's also hybrid, where someone's coming to you,
Right.
and the fulfillment is installation.
Correct.
That's crazy. You have got that. You've got the full e-commerce, experience and journey.
Yeah, but even then, your consumers are now also still changing, right? So the demand is, how do you get it faster? How do you make the service better?
So even though you've described it as kind of full cycle, full touch, it sounds like it's still evolving because customers are starting to ask for more and give you more feedback on how they want to see you guys do business with them, right? What are some examples that you're hearing from consumers? Because I think, whether it's e-commerce or any kind of business, that's really where, the secret lies, which is staying in touch with your customer. So I find it interesting, especially in your category of, the AC industry. What have you heard that's, I don't know, maybe interesting or driven y'all to change?
So let me tell you, so we started a new brand. So we brought a new brand here in the Philippines. It's called Shark Ninja. So it is the number one vacuum, the number one kitchen appliance in the US and in the UK. And when we brought it here, and the first launch that we did was e-commerce, right? And if it is an unknown brand, yet to the Philippines, if you're brand building, if it's not, as simple as an aircon or something that's very technical in terms of a product, and you're selling it e-commerce, once they buy it because it's a premium product, imagine merchandisers in the mall where you have someone demoing the product, doing it, but in e-commerce it becomes very difficult. Now imagine you delivering it to the consumer and them asking a live demo either via video call or an audio call for you to actually demonstrate how to use the product there. So because of this digitalization of things, manuals now seem to be very irrelevant because you are having a much more personalized approach to your consumers, they will already imagine you as someone they're very close to, as a friend, even if you just delivered it, to actually demonstrate it to them. And you'll be now a 24/7 contact center because the consumer demand is that every time I have a question, you would now answer. As compared to before, where when you buy it in a retail store, man, if you have other questions later on, you're not going to go out. You're not going to drive all the way back to where you bought it. So you'd see a shift now into the consumer mentality that because everything is coming to me, it's also a two-way street where now I can contact you in the fastest way. You're gonna give me or provide me a service that's gonna be, like a 24/7 concierge. And you're like now my new best friend. So it's more about how do you scale up your relationship building into these consumers? Because as soon as you deliver it to them with this level of service, the demands also or the expectations for, keeping that customer engaged is also becoming closer and closer to the customer. We joke around and saying that, all right, you're just a call away now. Why don't you, live with them? Because it almost feels like, especially with e-commerce, that because you're now much closer or direct to the consumer, that the expectation of it is also goes hand in hand. Where every time they would now have a question at 2 a.m. in the morning, they're not going to wait for a contact center. It operates 8 to 5. They're just going to say, all right, can you call me? Can you show me exactly now? How do you turn this on? And now you're seeing a different shift now of behavior, especially if you give them a good customer experience.
Great point. I think a lot of people really overlook, forget, just don't even put it into mind. They think that they can just slap products online collect money and disappear. But what we're hearing from you is, on the good news, you as a brand or a product, you can get closer to the customer, and that's what everybody wants or should want in a long-term successful business. Yet at the same time, you have to be deliberate and focused on creating a great customer experience.
Correct.
Otherwise, it's kulang.
Correct.
It's only part of the expectation, because
Correct.
you're telling us that customers are, now 24/7 because you're right there with them,
Mhm.
especially these types of home products. I mean, people buy them and they have high expectations, and then they'll get it delivered, and yeah, because they're busy, they may not open it and start using it
Right.
until maybe late at night, after dinner, putting the kids away, early in the morning, and they want to make sure that thing is exactly what they ordered.
Right.
A while ago, we were just talking about how consumer behavior demands are changing. And while that is something important that everybody must pay attention to, that could be a brand's opportunity to be successful, right?
Mhm.
Because the closer you are with your customers, that will do nothing but help you. But let's go back to the Shark Ninja product. Now, which products did you guys bring in? I have to say, if you guys have the robot
Oh, yeah,
vacuum,
yeah, yeah.
I
Oh.
I want to know about that thing, and
So you're right. We did bring essentially the vacuums. The robot vacuums are quite excitingly coming in next year. So that's that's the automation of cleaning in the house. But these vacuums are quite the best I've seen in the market. That's why they're essentially the number one in the US. We're also bringing in cookers, ice cream makers, double air fryers. I think the brand in itself, and the reason why it's also there's a nice lesson into this brand, because what it values is specifically solving consumer pain points. Similar to how we connected it with more of the learnings in e-commerce, where in the product, the delivery, the fulfillment, the customer experience should address a particular pain point for the consumer. So this one, at least for the Shark Ninja brand, we are talking about, consumer pain points. So one vacuum, for example, breaks in half so that you can go underneath the couch or the bed frames, because for the Philippines we are
very dusty.
yeah, exactly. And we're bed frame country.
Yeah.
We are couch where it's underneath. The dogs are all going in. So it's quite difficult for people to actually vacuum underneath. So that's what it solves. It makes it a lot easier to the consumer. So that's where the focus is. So that's why relating it and also to the delivery, into the customer experience. What consumer pain point are you really addressing? And that's something that's quite important, especially both from the product side, from an e-commerce standpoint. I mean, from an entire business perspective, I think that's what we need to really harp on.
So I'm glad you bring that up, because we do get a lot of uh, people asking to find more products to sell.
Right.
How did you guys go about researching and seeking out that category of product?
Right. So I think it's, for us, for that particular one, um, it came to us with a very excited and a very brand loving customer, right? So you'll always have this advocate that would say, "Oh my gosh, this is the best product that there is. I'm so amazed." It's like he's treating it as his son.
Yeah.
He's treating it as a family member, where it's really a vacuum. And you start to figure out, or you start to begin to research, because there's someone who's very passionate about it, someone who you don't necessarily get as an influencer. It's just a regular guy that's really passionate about the brand, who's talking to it because he sees the value and how it helps him. And we start to figure out those things, because you are solving a consumer pain point. And there are a lot of products out there, like a million of them. I recently went to the Canton Fair,
Okay.
um, and this April, and you'd see literally a million products.
Oh yeah.
And how do you begin to differentiate? How do you begin to choose what will work well? And you have to look for essentially that customer segment or customer pain point where you can, be hyper focused on what does it solve, who are your customers. If you start from that, then essentially you're able to isolate or focus on a particular product set good for the Philippines. So it starts with a problem. It starts with defining who are your consumers, defining what customer pain point and what channel do you want to bring that in. I mean, just being in awe that there are the entire mega, it's like a mega trade hall. It was 6 buildings of 8 floors or 6 floors each with
Jeez.
millions.
Yeah.
It takes you days. And that was just on home appliances. And literally it took like 2 days for me to just cover half of them. So there are really a lot to choose from. It's more of, what criteria do you set for yourself? So that you know what product to bring in, whether it's from a customer pain point standpoint, is it from a target market standpoint, or is it from a delivery or channel perspective, or something like that.
Well, I just thought, wow, what a great idea to bring in that product, because I would just based on observation with the economy changing, right? Since inflation, right? Cost of travel,
Right.
cost of eating out is going up. People are looking for quality ways
Mm-hmm.
to spend their time and create experiences at home.
Mm-hmm.
So, but people want good quality products, to
Yep.
your point, because in a way, especially Filipinos, they want to brag about, oh, check out this new gadget that I got. Everybody come
Mm-hmm.
over and huddle around the Shark Ninja,
Right.
the pressure cooker or the casserole thingamajigger or the robot, right?
Right. I mean, it's something to. It's. I think everyone wants to have like content or things to talk about,
Yeah.
and they're pretty much more prudent as to where they spend it. So unlike before, where you'd like the best gadget, you'd like the latest one. Now it's how does it solve your problem? Why do you
Now,
love it so much and stuff, right?
with that being said, I believe Shark Ninja is a premium product,
Yes.
right? I'd love to hear you and what you all have been thinking about in terms of, should you bring in a premium product, because especially the Philippines is just speckled with cheap
Right.
products and knockoffs and all these new brands that you don't know where they come from. Now Shark
Right.
Ninja has just a huge raving fan base. What were you guys, tell us what you guys were thinking about in terms of how you would be able to be successful with a premium product in a country
Right.
like the Philippines.
So what's nice about it is that it's a premium. It's an affordable premium. Um, the base premise of that particular brand is that it's quality, it's value for money, and it's something that will last you for a long, long time. So you treat it as a one-time buy that will last you for 5 to 10 years. We're not talking about months, we're talking about years. The
Yeah.
quality in itself would be, good for abuse. Um, because yeah, you can buy off a lot of cheaper products. But it doesn't really last you for quite some time, so you're forced to buy it again. I think what the brand in itself, what resonates to it more is that it's synonymous to essentially something that you will keep with you for a long, long time. That's why you invest in it. Um, for the vacuum, for example, the vacuum is quite premium, but you have a target segment here in the Philippines where you're now entering into a stage where you have the purchasing power and you don't want to essentially splurge it, um, in one go. You don't want to constantly buy cheaper products. You're looking for something that will last you a long time. Um, before we used to think that cell phones are disposable, where it's okay if you throw them out. But now when you buy, let's say your new phone, it lasts you for a long time. So you're now constantly looking for things that you know you will essentially use and abuse for a long time, and it still works at least at that point. So I think there's a huge market now for consumers that think that way. Consumers that are not worried about spending if you feel like there's value um, into the product, there's quality, and you're getting your money's worth essentially. So that's essentially what we are bringing in with that particular brand.
That's good insights. And I hope to see more of those consumers uh in our country, ones that value quality and dependability, and are just looking for a good investment,
Mhm.
no matter what it is that they're buying, right? Because again, unfortunately, in the early days of e-commerce here in the Philippines, we've just been plagued with low
Mhm.
cost, cheap, poor quality. I mean, the product basically disintegrates
Mhm.
after a few uses, right?
Right.
And oh my God, that's just bad. Gives everybody a bad name, right?
When we were testing out the product, um, so I had a so in my journey with marketplace, I probably have bought three vacuums in a span of probably a year and a half. So more or less the lifetime is around half a year. And I know which behaviors will actually lead to it breaking up. Meaning I drop it accidentally, or I overcharge it or something like that, or I
Yeah.
over clean it so it's wet and stuff like that, or when I would vacuum it's wet. Um, so I before selecting this particular product line, I actually did that myself. I dropped one vacuum for one floor, in the two what do you call this? Two staircases. It's gonna be like that. It still works. I did it three times just to be able to test whether it can survive me, and it does work. So
Well,
now
I
my
look forward to seeing the
the
dark
test
product.
videos.
Yeah, because I'm in the market. I love I'm into the home automation, and I've been
Right.
checking out those robot vacuums, and I have to admit, I was tempted to get uh a brand that I didn't know that had claims that the engine was higher power, but in the
Right.
back I didn't buy it because in the back of my mind I'm like, oh no, this could be another story where I get really
Right.
upset and regret my purchase because
Right.
it doesn't pick up dust anymore, you know.
I
Uh
think with e-commerce as well. Um, Now that reviews or consumer reviews are easy to find, I think now that becomes a very critical factor in your decision making. Because unlike before, like traditionally, when you go to a retailer, um, when you ask a merchandiser, "Oh, is this good? Is this?" Yeah, he's always gonna say it's good, but you have no point of comparison. And when you ask, "Are there a lot of people who are gonna buy it?" He's gonna say, "Yeah, yeah, of course," but you have no point of reference. As compared to today, that it becomes much easier for you to actually get reviews. It's quite easy for you to understand what were the problems that your normal consumers would have. And with the advent of technology, at the palm of your hand, you're able to, on the spot, on the retailer, tell you that, oh, this has a lot of complaints because the dust. You become, much more intelligent in a sense with the product because you're already armed with this information. And it's quite easy to get. So that becomes a battle with certain products because if you have more consumer reviews, the more likelihood that people will trust your brand and you will have that credibility. So it's not a hard sell anymore, essentially. So that's essentially why consumer behavior is now changing or shifting very fast because of these things. We used to think that endorsers are pretty much you spend a lot on endorsers, big things, big spend. But if you check on marketplace, no one's still buying it, then you have a problem, right? So as compared to before, putting up billboards is one thing, and now you're seeing that Facebook ads are behaving in a different way. So it's an ever evolving ecosystem that we constantly need to understand and learn. And you only do that by experimentation or learning, but always focused on how the consumer is changing and how it affects how you do business with them.
Yeah, good point. I mean, I think customer reviews are more affordable to do, but extremely important. And, let's just face it, we're all consumers, and
Mhm.
that's something that we all look for and get influenced by, right?
Right,
So,
right.
real quick, let's shift gears. Love to hear more. I mean, just amazing story on your,
Mm.
your journey as a corporate e-commerce, guru. But let's shift gears. Love to hear. Maybe you can tell us about, some of your entrepreneurial e-commerce,
Right.
you know, opportunities that you're working on.
Yeah. So so we launched what we call the lazy gentleman.
Where'd you
So
guys
I
get
said,
that name?
well, because we're lazy gentlemen. So I mentioned earlier that I was a full-time corporate guy and also a full-time entrepreneur. Um, because our target market essentially are the gentlemen that are the busiest, the ones who want to do a lot of different things but don't necessarily have the time to do the most basic things, which is shopping for their essentials. It could be as basic as that. We focused on essentially fulfilling the most basic things that a guy would essentially have their wives buy or girlfriends buy for them. So it's as simple as a subscription model where we deliver the basic essentials from a guy's perspective to their home, in a convenient way. So that's where we started to think about exactly what are the customer needs. So again, we just focused on who we are and what we are as a person. I'm a full-time corporate guy. I may not have
Busy. So
time to buy.
you're busy, and
I'm busy, but I need to have, let's say, I need shampoo because last night I noticed that I don't have shampoo anymore. And what I would normally do is I would get shampoo bottle, put water so that oh, there's probably still something here or whatever, and then shampoo. But then I would be in the office, and because I'm a full-time working guy, when I go to the grocery store, it's already full.
yeah.
I mean, it's already closed. Or I could be a guy that, it's just laid back. I would be sitting playing video games over the weekend, and it's lazy for me to actually get out to buy shampoo in the convenience store. So, how do we make it simple for that particular target market of a lazy gentleman, so that he can buy the most basic essentials for himself? Whether it's soap, shampoo, deodorant, uh, toothpaste, toothbrush, shavers, um, all of the other stuff that you would buy. We That's what we focused on essentially in our
Well,
business.
I would have to, echo the lazy part. Well, it's just because you have, most people are so busy these days. They have so many things going through their mind.
Exactly.
And yet at the same time, especially, because, I do some traveling. I'm the kind of
Right.
person that I always want, my travel bag or pack ready to go. And I don't want to be traveling and then get to my hotel or wherever I'm going and be missing all
Exactly.
the stuff that I need, right? And and it's too hard to think about those things. So
Yeah.
now, how did you guys come up with this? And uh did you think about other types of
Hmm.
business models or?
Right. So I think for us, what works for an entrepreneur is that you really should be more or less passionate about it. For us, it was the lazy gentleman, but it was solving a problem where we don't want to think about your problem anymore. So we want to I mean, it's something that, most basic, most essential, and yet it's something that we all forget because it's too mundane, it's too simple, but it could be something that you overlook. But it's also the basic essential for you as a person. We want to make it convenient for guys. Because if you look at e-commerce in general, 80% of e-commerce websites, marketplace is geared towards the female demographic. It's always there. Fashion. I mean, that's why it helps that, I have my e-commerce background because I'm able to understand exactly um, what is the demographic out there today. And when you look at what do guys normally buy, either they buy something big one time, which could be the latest iPhone or the latest Bose speakers, headphones, PS4, or the small incremental things that when you accumulate on a monthly basis or on an annual basis becomes a huge revenue spent. And normally, these things they rely on their wives or their girlfriend or something like that. The the funny
Wait,
the funny
I gotta interrupt you because you
yeah
remind me of that funny Facebook post where there was, two bars of soap, right,
yeah
in the shower. One is like a high-end looking soap, and the other one was like a ugly looking
norm
soap.
yeah
And I think the ugly one was the guy's soap, and it's the same soap that he uses to
exactly
wash his face, to wash his butt.
exactly. That's exactly what it is. And the funny anecdote of how we say, oh, how do you think about this? Well, it was in one outing, um, and it was a mixture of girls and guys, and then girls would have their own specific, what's your hair care, whatever. It was actually a leadership. It was a leadership outing that I had. So it was a strategic planning. And then the ladies were like thinking about, what hair care and whatsoever. And then the guys joked around and said, for us guys, as long as it says shampoo, that's it. And it's like, hey, it doesn't really matter. And sometimes when we talked about it, a guy, while funny, as long as it says shampoo, that's fine. As long as it says soap, it's fine. But when a guy sticks with one shampoo, he will stick with it forever. If a guy goes with one soap bar, he will use that exact soap bar and he will buy the same thing. So it's a creature of habit.
Good point.
And that's what we tried to anchor on. So when we were, it was a joke, and then we said, hey, it might be something that we could actually, help out a lot of other people.
Yeah.
Because we resonate with it. If it says shampoo, it's shampoo. If it says soap, it says soap, right? I mean, we're not as particular as the female population that would have specific stuff applied on their bodies and stuff like that. Like imagine you going to the golf course, and right after you play, when you go to when you go to the restroom, the guy hands you a small bar of soap, and the shampoo is already inside each of the different showers or cubicles. Does it matter? No. So you still use it, because it says shampoo and it says soap. So when you take a look at that particular consumer, you get to understand exactly what he's looking for. What are the things that matter to him, and how can you actually address certain pain points that you think would alleviate him or make him do other things. So for us, it was all right. Let's get away with the mundane. Let's simplify one process so that he can spend his time into something that really matters to him. So that was our vision, that we wanted to, you don't have to go out of your house, go to the convenience store, spend 2 hours, pay for parking, whatsoever way, spend 3 hours going out just to buy shampoo. Well, you can spend those 3 hours playing the great video game that you wanted to finish. So that was
Well,
our motto.
I do think, you do have a good, insight there, that men are creatures of habit, right? Once we have something, whether it's right or whether it's wrong, we just keep doing it.
Exactly.
right? So if you can capture that market, especially with the growing trend of brands going direct to consumer, so that they can save more time and just create more convenience out of their life, because D2C is absolutely growing. So sounds like you guys have an early head start. It reminds me, I'm sure you know this company, the Dollar
Dollar
Shave,
Shave Club, exactly.
right? And they sold for like over, I don't know, a crazy amount, like $1 billion.
Yeah, they sold for $1.4 billion, I think, to PNG.
Yeah, and let's face it. I mean, the Philippines is a very consumer driven market, and I think the men's category of personal care products is untapped. Like, who are the brands that own that?
Yeah,
Like, it's wide open,
correct.
right? So that's really cool. So, when you look ahead, that's not going to be easy because it's a tough market to crack,
Mm-hmm.
even though it sounds like there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
What do you think? What are the challenges that you face so far,
Mhm.
and what do you think might be the challenges that you anticipate looking ahead?
I think the challenge is what you did mention earlier about product selection, right? Because for a consumer, shampoo is, again, you're pretty much a little bit loyal to what it is. In fact, what we've noticed about consumer behavior for shampoo is that it doesn't matter if there's price fluctuation or inflation. A guy, when he does his grocery, will not compare. He will just put it in his basket. Um, and whether it's 200 pesos today or 400 pesos tomorrow, doesn't matter as long as he has shampoo. So the price fluctuation is not so much of a problem for our demographic, but it's the product selection or the product mix that's going to be important, because the challenge is, if you do a subscription model where you've anticipated that this consumer will have this and that, that, how do you have, from a back end perspective of inventory, the correct mix and the correct volumes to actually supply your multiple clientele? Because it's more of, all right, um, a guy would need to buy everything in one go. So does your store have everything I need or not? So for example, if I'm a guy who has, let's say, being a little bit brand sensitive at this point, but you want a Head and Shoulders, for example, shampoo, men, 2-in-1 anti-dandruff. Your soap, it's Dove Men, the green one. Do you have a close-up toothpaste, a toothbrush, a Gillette Mach 5, and shaving cream, even as far as condoms, for example,
Oh, yeah.
and whatsoever way. Do you have that assortment right now? Because if you're missing one in your availability of products, then I wouldn't go to you anymore, because I wanted all of it in one go. So it's
One
more of,
checkout, all the products in one checkout.
correct, one checkout, because I don't want to go to multiple stores, whether marketplace or whatsoever, to do multiple transactions. So it's more of, how do you ensure that everything that he is looking for in terms of the product mix is there? And mind you, there are, like you mentioned earlier, there are different iterations per men. So how do you get into a level of SKU or confidence where you have as much of the assortment as you can, um, while at least missing out on one or two items, right? Like shampoo, right? So let's say you just have two models of two brands and two products that are different from each other. But if you miss the third one and then everything else is here, there is a chance for that consumer to not put the check go not go to checkout, because he is missing one, right?
Well,
So if
along
you,
those lines, let me, if you don't mind, I got to give you maybe some real-time personal men survey
right,
insights without asking me, right?
right,
So I actually have to admit, I'm the kind of guy, I don't leave the house unless I've got hair product in, right?
exactly. Mm,
So here's the thing though. this is what I notice. I could be wrong, right? Because I don't want my hair looking different every day. The problem is every time I go to a store, they like don't have the same hair product.
Exactly.
And I can't find it. Once I find a product that I like,
That's it.
then I can never find it when I go back.
Exactly.
And then I'm on a journey to find a whole new product.
Right.
So I've got 2 or 3 bad hair products that I don't use
And it's
because
just
they don't work. Yeah.
I totally agree.
Can you solve that, bro?
Hopefully, yes. No, I mean, I can totally relate. So I use this particular hair product of mine. I just use ever since I was in high school, which
Yeah.
is it's like the bench fix, it's like a deodorant stick that you do that. You're correct, and once you have that, you're gonna stick with it forever. I know that my girlfriend's brother is in Canada.
Okay.
So the only request every time that either she comes here or I go there is the bench fix 360 clay dough mold. And I would buy like 5 of them because that's the only thing he has been used to. So again, to our earlier point earlier of that we are creatures of habit, I think that's it. And you're correct in saying that sometimes, your trusted store, when you go there, like, all right, I know that there's a high probability because it's their brand sake. It is bench. And you go to a store and yet sometimes it's still not there. So I think that's hopefully something that we could solve.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm glad it's not just me that has that problem, but yeah, I've got too many of those hair products that I don't use, because I had to try it because I didn't have the one that I
Right.
like. Yeah. So anyway, good stuff, man. So what's in store for 2024, the future of you when it comes to your e-commerce entrepreneurial future?
I think there's much more learnings in each of the different stores and each of the different brands that we carry. It's more of what are the bits of information that we can actually learn from one and apply to the other, right? So I think for me, like going going much more direct to consumer, being more or less much more closer to the customer, you're discovering other demands and other needs and other problems that you could actually solve even further. And you're more or less going to evolve your business many iterations or many times until you get it right. And even if you get it right, sometimes the behavior of consumers will all of a sudden change. So I think there's a lot in store for next year. A lot more learnings, a lot more iterations of how you can actually be a better provider of service or product to your end consumer, which is again the ultimate point of why we do e-commerce, why we enter into this type of channel or of an avenue for our consumers. So I think it's more or less it.
Well, I was going to ask you as well, what recommendations do you have for folks? But the future and how you stated it might be the recommendations, because I love what you said about getting close to the customer. And it sounds like even though you've got all this experience, and when you think you might know how to run your business, you said one key word: you anticipate more change.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have to say, there's a lot of people there that make a mistake and they think that once they start the business, they can just set it and forget it and money's just going to flow in. And with all your experience, you're still saying you're ready for more change.
Right. I think there was a comedian. I forget his name. Ron Chiang or something like that. For the late show. I think she's the co-anchor with Trevor Noah before. And he was joking around with Amazon, saying consumers before would expect that the best experience is the next day delivery. And then with consumers evolving, he is like, oh yes, before I think of my order, you put the order in my hand. And it becomes funny now, but when you think about how consumers are changing, next day delivery was before a premium and now is now a expected standard. Now you're looking at a 1 day delivery being reduced to 2 hours. And you're gonna be forced to, similar to like a Pizza Hut store where 30 minutes or less it's free. So you're looking at now a shorter window of time of delivery, and that's just on the delivery side, right? You're now looking eventually on consumers that will need to, return a product 10 years from now or something like that. So you don't know how, these things evolve. It's more of a matter of how well are you able to adapt to these situations and what can you actually do about it. Because you're right in saying earlier that, it's not really a set it and forget it type of thing. But it's a constant learning to the end consumer. I think sometimes it's quite easy because it's, well, pun intended, but it's the lazy gentleman's way of setting it up is, set it up, you make it good for the consumer until he gets it. And then when he gets it, we forget what that consumer will want next, what that consumer will, or how that consumer will evolve later on. Because you missed out on that relationship building, that it becomes now repetitive for that person, for him to be an advocate, for him to be a repetitive user and stuff like that. But sometimes the danger was just all right, when it's sold, it's done, right? You mentioned earlier that that's it. But what happens after that? I mean, your end consumer will change, your end consumer will evolve, but how do you evolve from that side? So it becomes a two-way thing. And that's why I think there are a lot of e-commerce platforms that either are closing or a lot of other things are now opening or evolving, or they're doing so many iterations because they're constantly evolving as well. Amazon before used to think that it's all e-commerce, and now they're going to brick and mortar, and now they're revolutionizing with automatic checkouts. So what could be next, right? It's nice to think ahead sometimes and evolve along the way.
Exciting stuff. Well, hey man, appreciate all the insights and the sharing of your e-commerce journey. Everybody, let's give it up for Flip Ruby, the shark ninja and the lazy gentleman.
The laziest gentleman.
the laziest of all the gentlemen out there. That's
all right,
awesome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opportunity as well.
Yeah, best wishes to you and great to hear from you, and to more success. Thanks, buddy. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey, Prosper Nation. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Prosperna e-commerce stories, where we learn and share success stories of e-commerce businesses and leaders. Please comment, like, share, and subscribe. My name is Dennis Velasco, founder and CEO of Prosperna. See ya.